And I think that's kind of opened up my horizons and been a pleasant experience as well. So cost of living obviously is less. I'm somebody who's in a different category. Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? This is BC. Today we're going to talk about my move, right? I moved to Miami 2.5 years ago, and I'm getting the question all the time, do you regret moving to Miami? And in this video, I'm going to explain to you a few reasons why I've come to my decision. So I moved in May of 2021 to Miami, Florida from Los Angeles, California. And a lot of people have been asking for my experience. I've talked a little bit on my old channel, but since, all my stuff got shunned and banned and demonetized, and I have somewhat of a new audience here on this new channel, I kind of wanted to give people a different perspective. So number one, do I regret it? Hell no, right? I love Miami. I love South Florida. This is like me having a real homecoming. I feel like I belong here. I love it here. And I'm just a raving fan, right? And I'll go over today in the video exactly why. So a lot of people don't know. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, bounced around a lot. I mean, I lived in Huntington Park, which is right by South Central and Florence and the low bottoms and all that. I lived in Pico Rivera. I lived in La Puente. We lived in Hacienda Heights, West Covina. My parents, I think before I was born, lived even some parts like in Long Beach. So we've been all around. And what I can say is this. Growing up is one thing. Being an adult running your own business and living your life is separate. So as I started to build my own business 10 years ago when I came back from being overseas, you start seeing the reality of taxes and the government taking your money and where it's going. And you become more keen to those things and you open your eyes a little bit. So I was already considering moving as my business was growing and my income was increasing a lot, right? What took that decision and violently shoved it from okay, I'm going to move to, okay, I'm leaving now was the whole situation with the C word, right? I really didn't support what happened in the world, the shutdowns and all that. I didn't support them. Los Angeles and New York and the big cities were probably some of the worst. And I was already, again, leaving. So that really just accelerated and facilitated that decision. So I left in May of 2021, right? I left, came to Miami, right? Building my real estate team. If for those of you who don't know, I went nationwide with my real estate team and took it outside of just Los Angeles and Southern California to multiple states a few months after they shut everything down. So I think it was June of 2020. I signed contracts with my regional leaders and we were off to the races and I started traveling a lot, right? We went to Montana, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, New York, Jersey, Pennsylvania, right? Some like Tennessee, like a bunch of states. And that really started opening my eyes from a, kind of like a national standpoint, a local standpoint of some of these other states, what life would be like. And I had always really, really identified with South Florida, right? I'd come to Miami, Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale. I'd visited before, but there was just always this thing that when I would leave South Florida, I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I want to stay, right? So when I was going out and looking, I had a lot of cities and places that I considered like, Atlanta. I really like Atlanta. I like Dallas and Houston too. But Miami and Florida was just always at the top, right? So when I decided to move immediately, I was like, man, best decision I've ever made, right? And here's some of the top things. Number one, the people. The people here, I believe, because we're in the South, are a lot nicer, a lot more family-oriented, a lot more welcoming, right? A lot more hospitable, right? That Southern hospitality. I've been experiencing it times 100, right? When I moved, my neighbors were, oh, hey, coming to my house, talking to me, being very open. And I'm not used to that, right? So if you're from like a Southern state, maybe you would experience the opposite if you moved to like LA or a big city, right? Versus for me, it was the opposite, right? Traffic is much better here than compared to LA, like hands down. The air quality here, amazing compared to LA. The air quality in LA is trash, right? Here it's much better. The weather, right? A lot of people will say, well, California, Southern California has that great dry weather. I love the humidity. And I would say when I moved, right, initially it hit me hard. I remember going to the boxing gym, right? Shout out to Soul Box, even though they closed down over there in Little 80. Man, those first workouts when I moved, I would be sweating through my shoes because my body wasn't used to the humidity. But I would say after about a month, 3 or 4 weeks, my body got acclimated to the humidity. And it's still hot here. It gets hotter than LA for sure. But it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Because when you visit, it's one thing. But when you live here now, you get used to it. So that's more of a personal preference thing. I love the humidity personally, and I've always liked it. So I'm not against it. So if that's a deal breaker for you, like 100%, I would say at least stay in that place for a month or two. And once you get acclimated, then make your decision if that's a deal breaker or not. Because again, if you're not used to it, yeah, it can seem hellacious, right? So I understand whether you're from Texas, you're visiting Texas, like Houston, or you're going to Florida or places where it's a little hotter and stickier. That could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. It's something they don't like. I like the fact that it's a big city, but it feels like a little city compared to LA, where I moved from. Like where I live in North Miami, I could take Miami Avenue down to downtown in 10 minutes with minimum or no traffic. I couldn't do that in LA. For me to go a couple miles, it'd take me an hour if there was traffic, right? So it's a big city, but at the same time, it's like not. I don't know if people will understand that point, right? And you can let me know in the comment section if you want me to elaborate more on any of these points. But I really enjoyed that, right? Like I get that big city feel, but I'm close enough, but also far away enough where I have like a nice house, a big yard. I'm chilling. It's quiet, right? It's another thing. It's so peaceful and quiet, right? I can leave my doors unlocked and my cars unlocked, and I have no worry in the world, right? I sleep like a baby. There isn't all these crazy noises, right? Another thing I enjoy is the wildlife. I have peacocks in my house, cats, lizards, chickens. Like maybe that's not everywhere in Miami, but to me, that's cool. I don't mind waking up to the rooster cock-a-doodle doing, right? Like to me, that's awesome. It's almost like I have a little piece of nature around my house. And maybe it's my energy. Maybe that's why a lot of the animals in the neighborhood kind of congregate to me. I don't know, but it's really cool. And I didn't experience that in LA for sure. It's a lot more green and plush, right? Compared to LA. LA is a concrete jungle. I would say Southern Florida and Miami is a lot more green. Even though it's flat, right, which some people don't like, it feels a lot more like I'm out in the wilderness or nature compared to just being in a concrete city that's 100% man-made. That's really the point there, right? The food here is incredible, right? In Southern California, right, if you guys aren't from there, we have a big Hispanic population. Like my family's from South America, but the Hispanic population there is mostly Mexican, right? Because most of the immigrants are either from El Salvador, right? Some places in Central America, but I would say 80-90% are probably of Mexican descent. You come to South Florida, you have a lot of Cubans, but you also have Dominicans, Caribbeans, Puerto Ricans, right? And you got Colombians, people from Venezuela, right? Argentina. You have a lot more diversity in regards to the Hispanic community. So with that said, the restaurants and the food, it seems like you have a lot more diversity and variety in that respect, which I love. Like I'm plant-based, so I don't eat a lot of the different stuff, right? But I still go to these restaurants and have little dishes that I can have, and I would say it's really cool. And having that diversity in the food and in the culture, I think is awesome versus just having more one type, right? And I think that's kind of opened up my horizons and been a pleasant experience as well. So cost of living obviously is less. I'm somebody who's in a different category. I make a lot of money. So that wasn't the reason that I moved. I live very well in California too. Like for those of you who follow me, right? The gated home and all the cars and all that stuff. So for the average person, I think it'll be better, but still it also depends, because if you're an average person working here and you work like a regular job and you live in Miami, it's still going to be tough for you because the cost of living compared to the wage is still, kind of harsh. So if you're a business owner or entrepreneur like me, moving out here is you're not going to feel it, and you might have a net positive, especially with saving that income tax. That'll help you a lot. But, if you're a day-to-day worker, it's still like a big city, right? You're going to struggle to make ends meet, I think. And especially now that a big influx of people like myself have come from out of the state, it's driven up the prices a lot. Like I'm selling one of the properties that I bought 2 years ago here, and I'm making like 25% profit in equity. It's just insane. I'm going to pocket like $120,000, $130,000 in equity in 2 years. That's insane. That's some crazy gains, right? But again, if you're the average person coming here buying a home, right? When I moved here, you could buy a home for, $350, you probably can buy some now, but they're going to be at least 100 or 150,000 more, so that would require a much bigger spike in your income compared to before, and only a 2 or 3 year time span, right? So those are just a couple things to add on to the fact, even though that wasn't the point of the video. But those are just some of the things that I enjoy about moving out here. I don't regret my decision. I see myself staying in Miami long term. I love it here. I always wake up and I tell people like almost every day or every week, man, I'm so happy here. I love it here. And they did vote. I think one magazine did a poll and they voted Miami as the happiest city, which I believe. So when people tell me they get people that are mean to them here. I don't get it. Maybe they go to South Beach where all the tourists are and they're getting a different vibe because that's a different world and I don't really go there. But overall, my experience here has been nothing but positive with the people. I've been to a bunch of different neighborhoods of different places, North Miami, South, a little bit more West, downtown, right? And I really like it. And I'm so happy to say, like, I really love where I live and I'm really enjoying it. So those are just my thoughts. If you guys want to comment anything below, you can. If you want to ask me any more questions, you can. This is somebody, again, that moved from Los Angeles, born and raised, to moving to Miami. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. We'll see you on the next video. Peace.